hadn't seen a dog. I hadn't seen a tree, I hadn't seen a car, I hadn't seen anything in 3 years. Where I was very barren. It was dirt and 6 layers of barbed wire, and I got to this other part of the prison that's within the same compound, yet it was entirely different. I had more freedom. And I thought this program would help me. I thought it would get me out of my own way. Because the time was starting to do me. And I was so angry. And I knew as soon as I got out I would drink again. I knew where I would buy it, I knew where I would hide it. I knew that I would be the same alcoholic I always was. So I decided to get involved in this program, and I realized after I started working with dogs that I loved it, and I'd never known that about myself. And after about 4 or 5 months in the program, they gave me my own dog to raise. They gave me an 8-week-old black Labrador retriever named Sandy. And they put this little puppy in my arms. And my whole world changed. I hadn't felt love in a very long time. I didn't know what love was. Because I built these huge walls around me to protect me from you. But what it does is it keeps me from everything. It keeps all the rotten, poison, toxic things in there with me. All the fear, all the pain, all the hate, all the shame. It's in there with me. And this little dog started to take the bricks out of this wall one by one. And I had my very first spiritual awakening in my cell, because this dog was with me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I looked at her. And she looked back at me, and I knew she loved me. And I knew she loved me, and she didn't care what I had done, who I'd hurt, what I'd looked like. She loved me for me. And it gave me this little flicker of hope. And one of my friends in Florida had actually come from Florida to New Jersey to visit me while I was in maximum security, and she brought me all this AA literature, the Big Book, Living Sober, all this crap that I shoved under my bed because I don't want it. And I kept it because that seed had been planted in me somewhere. AA was there somewhere. And once I thought there was a little hope for me, I pulled it all out and I started reading it. And in the minimum security part of the prison, they did have AA meetings, and I started going. And it's different, it's not like out here. But I got to learn things like what it meant for me to take what I need and leave the rest. And I did the best that I could. Eventually, after 6 years and 3 days, I was granted parole. And I was granted parole via the Interstate Compact, and I was allowed to come to Florida, which I didn't think that was going to happen either, because I'm the glass is completely empty alcoholic. Nothing good happens to me. I'm cynical and I'm negative. And when they said I got parole and I got to Florida, I was shocked. All I remember is my brother picking me up on February 5th, 2007 at the Edna Correctional Facility for Women and dropping me off at Newark Airport. And all I had on was gray sweatpants, a gray t-shirt, and a khaki coat that said inmate. And a stack of paperwork with my airline ticket and some ID. And I remember walking over to the front of the airport, and I said goodbye and thanks, and I was scared to death. And I remember it was 10 below zero in New Jersey, and I took my coat off that said inmate, and I stuffed it in a garbage can, and I walked inside. And I became so filled with fear. I didn't know what to do. It had been so long since I'd had the ability or the reason to think for myself. I was institutionalized. I was used to institutionalized. I was used to somebody telling me what to do. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. So eventually I just went with the flow, and I followed these people, and we got to the security checkpoint, and she's 2 ladies in front of me, and I'm standing there, in my convict outfit with my little packet of information, waiting to get through this big checkpoint, which I wasn't used to because 9/11 had happened when I was in prison, and now it was very cumbersome to get through the airport, and I wasn't used to it, and I was filled with fear that they wouldn't let me through. That they were going to know, some kind of major bell was going to go off when I walked through the metal detectors. Convict, convict, convict. And I was scared to death, and I'm standing there waiting for my time to go through the metal detectors, and these women are just bitching. I got to take my shoes off, I got to take my shoes off, and I'm sitting there thinking, my security checkpoints are far more invasive. And I will strip naked, bend over, lift them up, and cough. Right here, right now, let me through. No, they didn't want all that, but I got through. And I ate everywhere in the whole airport. I ate everywhere. Anyway, got on a plane, got to Florida, went to live with my sister, and filled with fear, overwhelmed. The day I was released from prison, I started a 15-year loss of license. That was part of my sentence. It started the day I came out. So now I am a convicted felon, on parole, can't drive. Now I have to look for work. Filled with fear. If I don't get a job, I can't pay my fines. If I can't pay my fines, I'm going back to prison. I didn't even know how to turn my sister's TV on. I used to ask her if I could take a shower. I was so tied up in knots. But I knew that I had to get to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. You see, because I know me. I know if left to my own devices, I will drink again. I never needed AA to stop drinking. I needed AA to stay stopped. Because I've stopped drinking 100 times, thousands of times. I can't stay stopped. Because the minute I hit a bump in the road, the minute my life is too bad or too good, I drink. And I knew I couldn't do that again. I knew I couldn't do that again. Because I will become a sick, suicidal alcoholic again. I know that. So I went to my very first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous when I got out of prison, and as God would have it, when I opened that door, the very first person I saw on the other side of the door was the very woman who had flown from Florida to New Jersey to bring me the AA material. Oh, wow. That was my first God experience with Alcoholics Anonymous. And I don't like sharing in meetings. I have a very hard time doing it. My sponsor smacks me on the leg. She yells at me. She does all kinds of things. But for whatever reason, that first meeting that I went to, when they said, is anybody newer coming back, my hand went up in the air. I became only as willing as the dying can be. And I said, my name is Rose. I'm an alcoholic, and I just got out of prison. And I used to sit there in the back, petrified, but I didn't know what else to do. So I just kept going. And I got to understand what it meant one day at a time, because I hated all your slogans. I got to tell you. Feelings aren't facts. Let me tell you something. When I'm feeling it, it's a fact. I hated it. I got don't drink and go to meetings. I got that. I got one day at a time. I got that. Think. What do you mean, think? That's all I do is think. That's all I'm doing. I didn't get those things. And the ones I didn't get, I didn't understand. And the one I didn't understand, I didn't know how to do. So what I could do was not drink and go to meetings. And that's what I did. And they said, get a temporary sponsor. And I did. And then they said, get a real sponsor, Rose. And I looked around the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous for somebody that had what I wanted. Because they had to be serious about Alcoholics Anonymous. Because I can't do this halfway. I got to love this gig. Or I'm not doing this gig. And if I don't do this gig, I'm not going to be lucky enough to die. I'm going to have to live again the way I was living, and I can't do that. I'm not willing to do that anymore. So I kept looking, and I kept waiting, and I kept listening, and I kept watching. And eventually, I was quite certain that this woman would want nothing to do with me because I'm a piece of garbage. Because I'm known as, that's Rose who went to prison. I'm that girl. I'm in the back. That was me. And eventually, I had enough courage to go up to this woman and say, would you be my sponsor? And she said, I was hoping you would ask. And that's a huge turning point in my life. She did for me what I could not do for myself. She didn't just drag me to meetings. She dragged me to Walmart. She took me to the post office. She made me go to the jail to put money on somebody's commissary books. I'd say to her, I'm coming out of my skin. I don't know what I'm going to do. She'd say, clean your sock drawer. And I thought that was code for something big. I'd say, okay, what does that one mean? She goes, Rose, dump the socks on the floor. Take them apart, refold them, and put them back in. And I'm like, what, is she kidding me? And I'd say, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm thinking too much. She'd say, let's go out and mow the lawn. I'm coming over with my weed whacker. It sounds funny, but this woman kept me busy and distracted from myself. I will never be able to repay her for the things that she did to me by keeping me busy. I cannot talk to anybody enough about the importance of sponsorship. She saved my life because I will drink again. She started making suggestions. Because sponsors don't give advice, they give suggestions. Which means you better do it. And the first one was go to women's meetings. Well, when you've been in prison for 6 years and 3 days, the last thing you're looking for is a women's meeting, let me tell you that. Because again, I'm on a man hunt, I'm looking for a man. Let's look around the room, let's look for a man. He's a good one right there, and then you find out 3 years later, thank God for unanswered prayers, because he's as sick as they come, but whatever. And I did what she wanted me to do, and I went to women's meetings. And she started working the steps with me, and my life started to change. I couldn't find a job for a long time because it's not easy when you have your life that you tote behind you. And I met this woman at a meeting, and my friend says, ask her for a ride. She's good about giving you a ride. She'll give you a ride to a meeting. And So she passed her little number across the table and said, if you ever need a ride, call me. And I thought, oh God, I hate asking anybody for anything because I'm so independent. Here I am, I can't drive, I can't go anywhere. I need to ask anybody for everything. So I eventually call up this woman and I say to her, you think maybe you could give me a ride to a meeting? And she says, I'll pick you up. So the first week she picks me up for the meeting.